putting water back out again. So I didn't know if the commission was aware of those couple details. I just want to make sure that's all out in the open. And that's where our request for the additional cost for labor is coming from.
And Paul, can I ask?
Because we know full well that it costs more water to treat water from Lily Pond than Elms Meadow. I think we all know that. It's much cheaper to treat groundwater. So I know the commission is going to have some added expense there. You know, you're going to have added chemicals, you're going to have added utility costs, and ultimately we're going to add, you know, sludge to the lagoon system out back. But getting back to the contract language, you know, I've gone through that, and I know Fred has, and I'm 100% in agreement. The language that's in Exhibit A is language that was taken directly from the RFP. And I will say this: when we put our price together on the most recent one, you know, we budgeted for the summer months. Just so you're aware, we budgeted almost 17% overtime. Off season, your typical overtime is about 4%. You know, people are out sick, they go on vacation, holidays, what have you, right? So I felt we did a really good job budgeting overtime for our normal summer seasonal demand, which is, you know, 17% for almost 3 months. This particular, you know, shutting down of Elms Meadow because of compliance was not in our plans. We didn't see this coming at all. Obviously, because there was no samples taken back, there was no data to let us know what the PFAS situation was back when the RFP went out. When we put our proposal together, you know, everybody was in the dark when it came to PFAS. So, but I am in agreement with your interpretation of the contract. It's pretty straightforward. It really, the language that's in there for out of scope adjustment is related to force majeure events, hurricanes, power outages, you know, things of that nature. This could technically be considered force majeure coming from EPA, but that's not how it works, and I understand that.
Okay, Paul, I have another problem here too, because when we did all that work with you taking over the sludge processing and eliminating the lime, we were working with you in effect that the sludge removal would not be happening every year. And that worked out well for, what, 2 to 3 cycles. Now all of a sudden we're down to sludge processing every year, which is impacting our budget greatly.
Right.
So this is something else we take into effect.
Right. And what happened there, Lee, is, you know, last summer, just to give you an example, and I know this only because I've spent a lot of time talking to Carl, Fred, and Joe, because I'm not there as frequently as they are, but we never saw organics as high as they were last summer and for as long as they were. We had organics coming into that plant close to 25 for total organic carbon. The history there was about 17 would normally be the highest. So the reason I mention that is it takes a lot of chemical to remove those organics. When you add chemicals, that generates more sludge. So because we're physically removing more organics from the water, those organics have to go somewhere. We take them out of solution and they show up as sludge out back. That's what contributed big time to the increase in sludge. You got to clean your filters more. That generates more sludge. You got to clean your clarifiers more. That generates more sludge. And then the added chemical increase, you know, to remove the organics. Still, all of those 3 items were the major contributors to that significant increase in sludge.
Well, now I know that we've
now this summer,
summer,
Lee, I know the organics they're still very high, but they're not as high as last summer for some reason. But we're still.
No, but these organics have been high for a couple of years now.
Yeah,
and
but
this is the question we've been asking. How can we discover anything about this? And we haven't really gotten any answers.
Well, I know in the MORs, the guys there, you know, Carl and Jonathan and Fred, they do a nice job on graphing our lab data, and TOCs are part of that. So I agree. The organics have been going up, but last summer, it hit an all-time high last summer, and it was for the entire summer. I've never seen anything like it in New England. Just to give you, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've never seen TOCs as high as I saw last year in Cohasset. We were still getting 80% removal, which is the best that plant's ever going to do. But you do 80% of 25, you're putting out a 5 or a 6 into the finished water system. There's a lot of New England water systems that start with a 5 and a 6. Just to give you to put things into scale, we're happy with ending with a 5 or a 6, and the majority of water systems in New England start with a 5 and a 6. So it's really, the organics loadings are very well known in the water supply with the rivers that feed, coming from Aaron Reservoir, that feed Lily. The limnology study that's on file there has some really good information on just the level of organics that are picked up as the water travels to Lily Pond at the various stages. So it's very frustrating. All I can tell you, Lee, and the rest of the commission is, even though the numbers were as high as they were, we still were able to get 80% removal, which is probably the best that plant's going to do with the technology that we have. So we're doing the best we can.
Can we go back to question on the table is these additional fees that Woodard and Kern is asking us to pay? I had a couple questions on that. Is this something that you see for a limited period of time because of the demand in the summer, or is this something that you expect to continue in the colder weather?
Yeah, this is Fred. I expect to see this through the end of the operating season, July into September, based on historical trends. Somebody else, Joe, can jump in regarding that, but I don't anticipate it going any longer than that.
So you're expecting it to be, we're in August.
Yeah.
You're expecting it to be August, September?
Yeah, at September the latest.
So what's the total amount that we're talking here so we get an idea of what the ask is?
Well, when I put the numbers together and I sent out that approximate 6,000 per month, that was to capture, worst case scenario, man hours, operating cost, overhead, so forth. So it could be a bit lower than that. That's worst case. And after Paul and I kind of vetted the numbers and discussed what we thought it would take, again, for labor and the additional operating requirements. So, yeah, I would think somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 worst case.
Okay, but I just want to get a total number when the start of the 5,000 or 6,000 is and when it ends. So I know, for example, we're talking July, August, September, we're looking at 18 grand, right?
Well, we turned it off at the end of July, so I would think August, September, so probably more like 12 to 14.
And I'll make it lower than that. How about this? I say we meet in the middle if that's open for discussion. That let's cut everything in half. Woodard and Curran will eat all the overhead costs. And if we could just ask the commission to pay for the direct labor, which is, time and a half, and then we'll eat all the overhead. So we'll eat the 55% overhead, and let's just meet in the middle. So instead of 12 grand, if we did 6 for the 2 months, because we're going through, I'll put it this way, we're feeling your pain and we're feeling it. This is a brand new regulated contaminant, and I think we're all learning really what's going to come of it. And, and as your management partner, we've been in town since 2012. I don't want to jeopardize anything to do with that relationship at all. So I'm more than willing to, let's just meet in the middle if possible. Like I said, let's just cut everything in half. So instead of 12 grand for August and September, let's say 6 for budgetary reasons.
And you would cap it at 6.
Sure.
Okay.
But there's a possibility of maybe less depending on what happens with the well field test,
Certainly.
and then you just bill us the hours.
If, you know what, Lee, if at all. Let's see what comes. If the next set of samples are very optimistic, then, you know, this could just be a Zoom exercise. So we're all getting more comfortable with Zoom. How's that?
It hasn't been working out too well for me lately.
Steve, do you have any thoughts on it?
I understand the cost just because I'm on the other side of the world on the electric side, and for overtime pay and whatnot. I get it. I know it's kind of outside the realm of the contract, but it seems like that seems like a lot of work down there. I haven't been down there yet. I'm gonna take Jason's tour soon, but I'm comfortable with that. I think we should just work with Wood and Carr and try to get those compounds out of the system. Those organics,
I agree. I think Woodard & Kern's been a great partner. I think they're being reasonable here to work with us
I think
in
so.
a situation that nobody anticipated. And this seems like a good middle ground to work through it as a team. So with that, I'll make a motion that we agree to Woodard & Curran's request for this additional labor cost capped at 6,000 and hopefully less. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thanks everyone. I've got one more. Paul, now that you're on the phone, you mentioned something I thought was very interesting and very helpful to me, and that is that Woodard & Kern is willing to discuss the cost savings once we do get DEP approval for the automation of the plant, and that would not just be pocketed by Woodard & Kern, and there would be cost savings to the town. And that raises the point. I'm looking at the contract. We are now in the second term of the contract, 3-year period that ends June 30th, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And under the contract, we're required to give at least 90 days written notice if we want to extend the contract for another 3 years until June 30, 2024. So I'd hope that we could just start those discussions soon, and that Paul and Joe, you can be involved in that, because I think they're going to be very important in the commission's evaluation of, extending the contract for another 3 years. And again, I think Woodard & Kern, in my opinion, has been great, has been a great partner. I'd like to see it continue, but I think we also have to look at the economic side of things for everybody.
No, and
That's a very good opinion you have there, John. I appreciate your statements.
Thank you.
Same, yeah.
And just to reinforce, the majority of the savings will obviously come from overtime, right? So even in the summer months, now that you're running in a plant that's approved to operate unmanned by DEP, we wouldn't need to physically have people on site for 16 hours a day. You could get by running it, one shift if DEP approves that. Again, it's all at DEP's discretion and how happy they are with the shutdown capabilities of the plant, the alarming capabilities, and I just don't know how that's all going to shake out with this whole COVID thing right now either. So I can't give you a timeline on DEP's schedule and their timing to get in the plant and approve certain things. And then just also to remind the commission, there's still several other things we need to work through to get those systems automated as well, like the sludge and a couple more components of the filter, backwash system. So those units could clean themselves if someone isn't on site. If they're not able to clean themselves, the plant would then shut down and we would have to physically go in to make that happen. So there's still a couple things we got to work through.
Can we agree though, Paul, sooner rather than later, maybe at our meeting in September, that you could attend just so that we can more fully go through, even if we don't have all the answers, kind of the way we need to analyze this going forward? Because I just don't want to be in a position coming up 90 days before June 30th, 2021, and not having the information, so the commission's forced to make a decision one way or another.
The other note too, if we're going to start talking about the cost savings and operations, we should try and put into the budget in the future then a SCADA line item and make it a little bit more robust to support this automation and make sure it stays up and running and operational too.
Right. And there's also, I mean, there's things that you can bring to us, I think, Paul. We also know that every professional on this call is in high demand because there are a lack of people with your skill set. And so costs are going up on Witter and Kern's end in that regard as well. So I think having a meaningful, open discussion on all these issues will help the commission out a lot, because this contract was negotiated back in 2015 and a lot changes every year. So having a good, frank discussion on all this would be helpful to me, at least.
No, and I agree with that, that philosophy or mindset that, there may be direct savings from overtime, but do we then take some of those savings and give market adjustments to the staff there? Because the salary market for licensed professionals and people like Brenda that are managing, the front end of the store, if you will, those salaries continue to escalate well above the normal escalation index or the CPI index that comes out of Boston and Nashua. So that's certainly something we would evaluate as a whole when we're looking at restructuring our fee, once we get to unmanned operations that are approved by DEP.
Yes, and I remember, Paul, we were discussing these unmanned operations as soon as you guys came on board. It just takes forever for DEP to do anything.
Exactly.
And I also understand where you're going about the market cost, because my husband and I were laughing last summer because of his water licenses. He was offered a job in Somerville, and I hate to tell you how much it was.
Well, I'm going to give you an example.
They did not find anyone.
I'll give you an example that's real close to home, and then I'll shut up because I can talk all morning. But right next door in Hingham, because we bid on it, and we didn't win the bid, Suez, right, took over for Aquarian. Their operators that work at the plant, now this is not management, these are operators. They're all making $42, $43 an hour because they're part of the AFL-CIO union. Yes. My highest paid operator in Cohasset, it's at $31. So you got guys working in Hingham at the water plant, they're great guys. They got a ton of experience, but they're making as much money as some superintendents are making.
Paul, I agree with you.
And they're making more than that in Somerville.
Yeah. So just to give you an idea of how crazy right now the labor market is for the water and wastewater industry, it's something we would need to talk about and evaluate. Like you said, John, when we do sit down and look at our fee structure, once DEP allows us to get there.
That's why our next door neighbor, we're actually happy.
Yep.
So.
Okay, one other thing I would like to discuss in the future too is with the TOCs. As I sent that email out recently talking about dredging of the pond, that they've been talking about that 25 years ago. And have you worked with any other clients that had any positive effect after a pond dredging?
I have, and I can maybe Fred has in his travel. I've dredged non-water sources and, copper sulfate certainly on a shallow reservoir like Lily Pond, for example. That would work really well. But you have other concerns with that, right? You would need very low doses of copper sulfate to only treat 10 feet of water at the deepest point. I mean, Lily Pond is so shallow. But actually dredging and everything that goes with it, I have not had. The only experience I've had is at Superfund sites. I'll put it that way, not at drinking water plants.
Okay, yeah, because the talk back then was we might gain something like 1.5 to 2 feet capacity.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know how they come up with those numbers.
Yeah, to speak to that further, we just begun algae sampling this operating season, Lee, to look at what kind of species are there and that would copper sulfate help. I agree with Paul. It's a pretty quick, easy application that can greatly improve water quality. So we are definitely looking at that, and we'll keep you informed as to how we're going to move forward. And as far as dredging, the experience I've had, I have dredged a small reservoir. It was kind of a distribution reservoir, if you will. So it took water across land from larger sources to a 2 million gallon or 2.5 million gallon reservoir. Then fed a treatment plant. So we were able to get that permitted and approve that work through Connecticut DEP or its Department of Health as well, because it was kind of labeled maintenance. So we did a bathymetric survey. We looked at that mapping. We had a great understanding of how much capacity we lost. And then we were able to get rid of the material. We stored it on site on the reservoir. We were able to do that, or actually it was just off watershed, but on water property land, if you will. And then we were able to sell some of that material as well. So you can look at the types of material. I'm not sure that'll work for Cohasset, but it's definitely worth maybe doing a study to look at what type of materials there and how much capacity you have lost, and then evaluate it once you have better information. But
yeah, we presume it would be in the facility study too.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
I said you would presume that with the facility study we have upcoming that something like that would be included to see cause and effect.
I don't believe that's in the current facility study scope, but it potentially could be added.
I know you're looking at some serious money, Lee, when you start getting into the dredging conversation.
Well, I know, but supposedly the state had some funds available. We have to see if they're still prone to use them for something like that.
Right.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
I just have one more question. It's very simple. Do you guys have a to-do list, like a honey-do list that you guys are like working on? I see it, when Brenda sent that report, I think is great, all the stuff that's been completed. But do you have like a honey-do list?
We have a 10-year capital plan, Steve.
Oh, I must have missed it. That's my fault.
No, I can forward one on to you.
Okay.
And that changes on a dime, by the way.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. I understand that.
That's kind of our honey-do list, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send it out.
It changes because things come up like this. The PFAS comes up, and then the Capital Budget Committee always gives us a hard time because our list changes. But
Wow.
That's an aside.
It's an unfunded mandate, They just want you to get into compliance, but they don't care where you get the money to do it, and they won't help you either.
That's right.
Hey, this is Joe again. Carl, could you reach out to DEP again regarding the June 30th test and see if you can find out what they're going to do with those J values?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Okay.
We appreciate you guys at the plant, working.
Yeah, we do. So motion to adjourn.
Lee, you got one more?
No, I was going to call for an adjournment.
Okay.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Have a good weekend, everyone.
All right,
Thank
bye,
you.
everybody.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.